Manufacturing and Enterprises. Welcoming you for today's virtual panel discussion. The topic of which is, can India build a global manufacturing capabilities? Before we proceed, let me share a few in brief the proceedings of today. So after the initial remarks, there will be a panel discussion for about an hour. And after that, we will open the floor to take questions from the participants. An humble request who has joined us through Zoom to keep their cameras off and mute during the panel discussion and the program. Towards the end, once we are done with the panel discussion, you are free to ask the questions. Either you can type it in the chat box, or you can, who has joined through Zoom, they can ask directly to the panelist. So with this brief introduction, let me start today's program with a short presentation on smart manufacturing and enterprises. Let me share I hope the screen is visible to everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Smart Manufacturing and Enterprises is a 52-year-old magazine. So it was earlier known as Industrial Product Finder. SME reaches to more than 1 lakh readers every month through its magazines and website. And as you know, India is emerging as a major economic power in the world. And SME covers every aspect of manufacturing, from latest technologies to government policies to business strategies. So Smart Manufacturing and Enterprises offers an assortment of news, views, interviews, and well-researched articles. SME is circulated in manufacturing and engineering sectors such as auto component, electrical, electronics, metalworking, machine tools, process industries, plastics, packaging, defense and aerospace, and general industries, among others. We have presence all across major cities: Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Bangalore, Chennai, Coimbatore, and Ahmedabad. Smart Manufacturing and Enterprises is published by ASAP Info Global Group, which also publishes magazines like Indian Textile Journal, Construction World, Equipment India, Indian Cement Review, and Infrastructure Today. ASAP Info Group also hosts conferences and exhibitions such as India Construction Festival, Cement Expo, 3i Expo, Rasta Expo, and Infrastructure Today Conclave, among others. So coming back to today's roundtable. As you know, Indian government has been aiming to increase the contribution of manufacturing to GDP from around 17% to 25% for last many years. To achieve it, Government of India has rolled out various initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, production in linked incentives, that is PLI scheme, low corporate tax rates for the new manufacturing units, among others. Despite efforts, manufacturing sector's share in the economy has not significantly increased, remaining at around 17%. While China plus policy and relatively high national GDP growth present a big opportunity for India to emerge as a manufacturing hub for the world, Indians are facing issues like slower export demand, rising regional conflicts, and geopolitical tensions. Against this background, today's panel discussion will try to find out the best possible ways for Indian manufacturing sector to navigate through these challenges and be competitive globally. Our guest speakers for today's events are Dr. Jairam Varadaraj, Managing Director, LG Equipments Limited; Professor R. Jairam, Head Capstone Projects, SP Jain Institute of Management and Research; Mr. Sandeep Kullar, Director, India of Highway and Commercial Vehicle, Dana India; and Mr. T.K. Ramesh, Managing Director, Ace Designers Limited. The session will be moderated by Mr. Manish Junjunwala, Executive Director, PwC India. So let me stop my PPT. And before Mr. Junjunwala takes over, let me introduce Mr. Junjunwala and our esteemed panelist of today. So Mr. Junjunwala is an executive director with advisory data and analytics practice of the PwC India. He has more than 20 years of professional experience in the field of risk, governance, data and analytics advisory services. He has advised large multinational corporations, private and public sector enterprises. Apart from working with large Indian companies, Mr. Junjunwala has worked extensively in US, UK, UAE, Canada, and Nepal. Then we have Dr. Jairam Varadaraj, who is a managing director of LG Equipments Limited, a global air compressor manufacturer based in Coimbatore. For nearly 30 years, Dr. Jairam has led and guided the organization's business interest in textile, polymers, mechanical machines, and consumer appliances. He is on board of a diverse set of companies involved in consumer appliances, textile, casting, boilers, and an active board member of non-profit organizations engaged in medical care and education. Then we have Professor Jairam, who is the head of Capstone Project at Bhavan's SP Jain Institute of Management Research. He has worked in several capacities, including Tata Steel, for over 30 years. He has authored over 60 papers in academic and techno-economic journals in India and abroad. Recently, Professor Jairam authored a book titled Thoughts for a Better Tomorrow, which is available on Amazon. And we have Mr. Sandeep Kullar, who serves as Executive Director and GM of Dana India Off-Highway and Commercials. In this role, he is responsible for Dana's off-highway and commercial businesses in India, including 6 manufacturing plants that serve both global and Indian OEMs. He has been part of off-highway industry in India for nearly 10 years. Mr. Kullar has also spent time at Honeywell as GM and Global Commodity Manager and Delphi as Manager of Purchasing and Supplier Development. And finally, we have Mr. T.K. Ramesh, who is a Managing Director of Ace Designers, the largest machine tool manufacturer in India and the flagship company of 3,000 crore Ace Micromatic Group. He has over 4 decades of experience in marketing and overall strategic management with a proven track record of leading organizations to sustainable growth and success in domestic and international markets. Mr. Ramesh is a member of the board of 4 companies of the group and 2 industry associations. So on behalf of Smart Manufacturing and Enterprises, I would like to welcome you all for today's panel discussion. With this, I would request Mr. Junjunwala to take over the proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this highly anticipated panel discussion on a topic of such immense significance, which we are saying is, can India build a global manufacturing? Can India build a global manufacturing capability hub? We are delighted to have a distinguished panel of experts with us today and who bring a wealth of knowledge and diverse perspective to this critical condition. So, friends, today India stands at a pivotal juncture in its economic journey with a rapidly growing economy, a youthful and dynamic workforce, and a strong commitment the government towards fostering a business friendly environment. The potential of India to become a powerhouse in global manufacturing has never been such more promising. Such some initiatives like Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, PLI schemes, and many other reforms has already set the wheels rolling for this transformation. But while this is one side of the story, we also have a path to becoming a global manufacturing hub is full of challenges as well as opportunities. Issues such as infrastructure development, skill development, technological advancements, supply chain efficiencies need to be addressed comprehensively. In addition, we all know the global landscape is in a constant state of flux, influenced by geopolitical shifts and tensions, climatic changes, trade policies, and the continuing impact of COVID-19 in certain economic geographies. So today's discussion aims to explore certain strategic steps India must take to enhance its manufacturing capabilities, the role of public and private sectors in driving this growth, and the lessons we can learn from other countries that have successfully established themselves as manufacturing giants. Our esteemed panelists will share their insights on this topic. We are excited to hear their expert opinions and engage in a thought provoking dialogue. With this, maybe Dr. Jairam, my first question to you is how do you assess the current status of the Indian manufacturing sector?
Thank you, Manish. It's good to be here on this panel. Hello to everyone. I think if you look at a 30,000 feet assessment of Indian manufacturing, I would put them into three buckets, three different states of the art. State of the past art, there is a small percentage of companies that are sitting still in the state of the past art as far as manufacturing, technology, and capabilities are concerned. A large percentage of companies are in the state of the present art in terms of, again, the technology. Very few are in the state of the future art. And when I say state of the future art, I don't mean just the digital technologies, but also fundamental science of manufacturing, the processes, systems. There is so much to be done in building the future of manufacturing. So I would assess, my overall assessment is into these three buckets.
Good. Mr. Cooler, do you want to add on this perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Manish, and thanks all the participants and panelists. So just to add to what Mr. Jay said, currently what we see, especially in the sector that we operate in, the tier one auto component manufacturing sector, I think there's a lot of exuberance and there's a lot of opportunities. Considering the the government push on the infrastructure investment and creation of infrastructure, there's a lot of demand we are seeing, especially on the automotive side, construction equipment, agricultural, and material handling. The e-commerce is growing. There's a lot of requirement on material handling side of the business as well. And on top of this, what we are seeing is there are multiple opportunities from our global customers. They see India as a very strategic partner currently for their global requirement because they are looking at their global meeting suppliers meeting the global quality and delivery requirement at a very competitive pricing. And what is helping us here is especially there are a lot of OEMs who are de-risking their supply chain from their over dependence on China. For many years, China was the main manufacturing hub, and with all the geopolitical, realignment, global companies are looking at opportunities outside of China. So that's helping us as well. So, and many OEMs they are setting up in India not only the manufacturing base but sourcing and manufacturing base to support their global manufacturing operations. So that's a great opportunity we see. So we see, to sum it up, we see strong demand from both local and global customers. And now it's in our hand, how do we capitalize this opportunity? Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely, Mr. Cooler. And with this, Mr. Ramesh, probably what I would like to know from you is how do you look at the market conditions, mainly from an export-oriented perspective currently in the manufacturing sector?
Good afternoon, and my own words of welcome to the panelists and the participants. Thanks for being here. The market situation, both from a global perspective and from a domestic perspective, is exciting. And I use the word exciting with a lot of responsibility. Just to add to what Mr. Jay said a little while ago about the state, the past, present, and future state of art. See, it's always been an exciting market. If you look back maybe 10 years ago, you had the Fiats and the ambassadors, and it was very exciting when the Marutis and the Fords and the Yamahas and the Hondas came in. So this issue about past, future, present is a continual affair, So is the situation exciting? Yes. Is the situation tough? Absolutely yes. And that's where the difference of, when the going gets tough, the tough need to get going. The market is good. Markets always are good. How well are you prepared? One definitive change that is happening compared to the past to here is whatever we call of the state of turmoil or VUCA or inability to predict beyond a certain point. Earlier, you could predict what would happen and you could make plans for years. Today, perhaps you should plan for a year, but you must act by, I don't know, shorter terms. So if a long-term plan is 5, perhaps now it becomes 2 or 3. And if the long-term plan is 2 or 3, then your strategic plan, you really need to look at being agile and quick to try, fail quick, fail cheap, and retool yourself to come back into the market. So like what Mr. Kohler said, is there a market? There is definitely a market. Is it growing? It's definitely growing. Is it becoming more competitive? Of course, it's becoming competitive. So it's about how we are able to adapt and take advantage by offering something that is of better value into the marketplace. So these are definitely exciting times.
No, and it's very, very good to and heartening to see that there's so much of optimism in the current environment about the domestic demand specifically. And with this, maybe Mr. Jayaraman, I would move to you. While we are talking, we've seen so much of optimism in the current scenario. What do you think are the key challenges before manufacturers in India, considering that the last couple of years has been very ups and downs globally, uh, given by so much of geopolitical tensions, so much of embargoes? So how do you look at what are the current challenges for the manufacturers in India?
Thank you, Manish. Delighted to be a part of this high-powered team. Lots of experience on the table. We are in exciting times. As Dr. Jairam said, he split into 3 parts. I would like to look at it as into 4 parts, which is the industrial revolution. Part 1, 2, 3. We are now in the 4th age of industrial revolution. The 3rd age was computer, and the 4th age is Industry 4.0. Some people talk of Industry 5.0 as well, where they say that suddenly they have realized that the human being is very important. So the Japanese have come up with a new concept. I don't know if it is new, but they have come up with a concept called human plus the IoT type of development. So that is the current state. India has been a participant in industrial revolutions, but I think the participation increased when the 3rd one started, the IT, where India has definitely found its niche. It has found its place. And I think there is no power in the world which can equal India in this specific field of information technology. Going forward, we are going to see a lot more of IT and if you look at the last couple of years, there have been a lot of developments. The current government, which came into power sometime in 2014, has been trying to do a lot of things in a very great hurry. And that was needed. So there is a lot of momentum that has been picked up. So if you look at the last couple of years, and what are the key challenges that manufacturers are facing? I would think first is the capital investment. In fact, yesterday or day before, the Times of India carried an article on how things depend very much on local industrialists to invest. In the last few years, the government has been one of the biggest investors, and that investment has been really in terms of infrastructure, creation of power, electrical power, and so on, and then one of the biggest investment has been in the defense sector. So these are the things that the government has done. However, the private industry needs to also contribute. They need this segment of the industry needs to contribute. Why is it important? Because in 2023, the FDI, which is a very important source of capital for the Indian industry, fell by 43% from $80 billion to 46. And it is expected to fall further in 2024. So therefore, new private investment needs to be brought in. However, what has happened is that it has been dropping since 22. So this is a very serious situation. I hope that Indian industrialists will take up this challenge of generating capital. Similarly, while there have been companies in like Mu Sigma and so on, which have been trying to develop new skills in professionals. For example, new skills in handling artificial intelligence, machine learning, and algorithm development. Still, a lot more needs to be done. Today, if India has to move forward, it has to have a lot of presence in AI and related areas. These will have to be done to begin with in engineering colleges as well as professional bodies. So this is another area of concern. Third is the offering appropriate compensation. I think Indian salaries are very low compared with what they are in international markets. Recently, I saw that almost 30% of IIT graduates have not been placed. And one of the reasons it appears is that some of them are refusing to take up the jobs which were offered because the salaries are not up to their expectations. So these are the kinds of things that are happening. At least these are three issues which I find have to be dealt with in the near future. Thank you.
Good insights, Mr. Jayaraman. Mr. Ramesh, now there is this entire theory of going around of the China plus one from a sourcing strategy where, given the growing tensions between India and US, most of the companies are looking at some alternate kind of a sourcing geographies. What's your view? Is India actually been benefited with that?
Yeah, there has been some benefit because of the China plus one policy. A lot of people who had good bases in China are looking at India. But again, have we been able to exploit it and have we been able to take full advantage of it? This is exactly, again, it comes back to the question of how prepared and how ready we are. And this preparedness and readiness, I would kind of, try to put it into two buckets. One is from the companies themselves, which again, like what was alluded right now, do we have the right kind of competencies, the people, the infrastructure, and again, the basic science. And the second part is how ready we are as a country. Now, has it benefited? Definitely it has benefited. But has it been at the scale that we would like it to be? I don't believe so. We are competing. Again, if we take automotive industry or automotive components as an example, I really don't even want to go into the electronics because that's going to be some times away. We see that we are competing with, say, Vietnam. We are competing with, say, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and those kind of countries too, where both from an infrastructure perspective and from the readiness of the company perspective, things look to be a little more prepared than what we are. But yes, thanks to the automotive giants that are already here and thanks to their efforts and the supply chain that they have built up, we are able to scale up, get into newer and newer, what shall I say, technology levels. Are we really bringing in so much of value? We are still at a nascent stage, and that's where the catch-up. And that catch-up has to happen not just by material arbitrage or people arbitrage. It has to come from technology arbitrage, and which is where, our processes, our science, and of course, our scale needs to be better. But will we benefit? We will definitely benefit, but it all depends on how quick we are able to make investments, how quick we are able to act. And I think there, the most important aspect is how are we going to leverage our human capital? While we have a lot of human capital, leveraging that is, I believe, one of the biggest challenges that we will have to collectively work on.
No, absolutely. And I think the human capital which you touched upon, and when we're talking about that will become a differentiator over here, probably, given how can we scale up the skilled human capital, because Mr. Ramesh, you spoke about bringing in the AI, which is artificial intelligence experience. I think that's where the human involvement and human um, involvement is very, very important. So, Jairam, do you have any additional views on this? Has India been able to fully exploit this benefit? While we understand from Mr. Ramesh, there is still miles to go. Sorry, Mr. Jairam, you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So certainly the China situation has been happening for the last more than 5 years. Definitely companies like Amazon, Apple, Danfoss, and that list is quite long. All these companies have either shifted out wholesale or certainly shifted out to a good significant extent. I have myself written a lot of articles on why the China syndrome is bad for the world. It was, it violated every principle of location selection. In operations management, we teach how to locate facilities, and all the things that the European and American companies did by going to China violated many of these principles. But then every company set up shop there just because the cost was favorable. Now that the Frankenstein's monster is out of the bag, there is a scramble for sanity, in the sense that everybody liked China, but when China turned up the screws, then everybody found out what a dragon can do. So India is an obvious choice for all the right reasons. I remember Dell, for example, they were not looking at China. They looked at India, they looked at Malaysia, they looked at Thailand and so on. And they set up facilities in Malaysia and everything, but they avoided China. But after that, the big race started to get into China. Now, I would say there is no more China plus one. I would say minus China plus one. People are moving out of China. India is an obvious choice for all the right reasons. It's basically Indians are peaceful people. It's a democratic polity, skilled and hardworking lot, young population, and top it all, number one in IT. In fact, I am trying to get a definition of IT as Indian technology, not information technology. So I think that IT is going to really take India to greater heights. This is a good recipe for success. A large volume production with supporting large investments are natural in India, and these are available in India, and that is what is going to take us forward.
Right. Right. Well, I think you touched upon the very right point. While the cost always used to be very important factor, but I think with many other things, the entire political environment is also an important factor within the country when such global companies look at decision. Mr. Kular, with this point, what do you think, in addition to the cost, what are the yardsticks the global companies look at while they take their investment decisions in for any geography or any region? And how you think, India is faring on that?
Sure. Thanks, Manish. I think it's a very pertinent question for any global company to make an investment decision. So typically, there are few things that global organizations look at before they make the decision. One is size of the market and the long-term business opportunity a country presents. It has to have some domestic industry, right? Domestic opportunity or domestic consumer. Then the ease of doing business, continuation of government policies and tax structure. I think that's very important, for companies to make decisions. Then availability of infrastructure required for the manufacturing sector, and also the logistic network for export, because a lot of companies rely on export. So this is also an important criteria. Apart from that, availability of skilled manpower in manufacturing and other functions, availability of good domestic supplier base, because otherwise you can't manufacture everything in-house. So you have to have the good domestic supplier base and for material and components. And last but not the least, competitiveness of a specific country versus other available option to invest in. So you have to be competitive versus the rest of the world if we have to be successful. And I feel India scored favorably on most of these parameters, and that's the reason we are attracting a lot of global investment in India. Thank you.
Correct. And I think you mentioned about the ease of doing business, and obviously that also include the policies which any country introduces within their own domain. And with that, Mr. Ramesh, while the government of India has also started a lot of reforms over the last at least 10, 12 years, and one of them is Atmanirbhar Bharat, and with this PLI schemes for 13 sectors over the period which has been rolled out. Are you seeing any impact of the same on the ground, and what's your views around that?
Yeah, there is definitely an impact. There's a lot of buzz has been created. The very fact that manufacturing has been put on a platform. We had a platform, but yes, the platform has been strengthened, and the impact of that is happening and is also beginning to tell. Now, PLI schemes, etc., are for bringing in technologies that were never ever present here in India. This is largely for electronic manufacture, chip manufacture. A lot of that has been happening. Now, has it had an impact? Definitely, it has had an impact, and I believe that this is just the beginning. But I don't believe these are things that will bear fruit in the short term. When I say short term, I am talking 2 years. It has definitely helped in hastening the beginning. Now, for it, see, like you were mentioning, still we are, as GDP, we're perhaps 15, 17% manufacturing. Now, if you're really looking at doubling that to 30%, 25%, 40%, etc., now, and if we expect that this is going to happen in 3 years, I think a lot more has to be done. While it's very nice to bank on the prowess that we have done from an IT, again, I am not Indian technology, I'm talking about information technology. Please understand that all the investments are people and what goes on between the 2 ears of a person and a machine. The minute you're talking about manufacturing, like what Mr. Kuller said, whether you like it or not, you need material, you need manufacturing, you need technology. And it's a lot about, stages and teams. So it's slightly a different game for mana. Of course, definitely IT has given us a foothold in the global. We are recognized for it. Our people have been recognized, but then so has been the case for decades. India is known for doctors, engineers, tax practitioners, but from a product perspective, is it automobile, is it mobile phone, or is it it's definitely going to take us a while. But again, the future looks good. The foundation is strong. Despite a lot of hurdles, we have been able to do good. If you really look at because of the aerospace manufacturing, the offset in manufacturing, there are a number of people who are now at least providing parts, services. GE, all the multinationals have been utilizing us for research development. All the who's who have research centers here. Again, all of that is because of the human talent that was available, and of course the fact that manufacturing is not glamorous enough, is not paying enough. They were able to attract. Now, this is where what is it we as Indian industry try to work on with, of course, the government support. So in these areas, I still believe a lot of work needs to be done. While I am not berating the platforms that have been created, but celebrating manufacturing, making manufacturing glamorous, attracting more and more of the youth towards manufacturing. And this happens by making sure that this platform for manufacturing and the successes in manufacturing are celebrated more and more. I think this is one very, very important aspect. Industry, along with the government, and along with the other training institutes really need to put back to bring respect and future in manufacturing. I think that's an extremely important aspect that we still have to do.
No, you're right. We have always been looked as more of a service kind of a country who produces, as you rightly mentioned, whether IT professionals, doctors, and other services. And I think, and that's where the entire dichotomy has been. How do we now become a global manufacturing hub? And to you, Mr. Jayaraman, while this PLI schemes and all other reforms done in the past looks good, but on the reality check, we have seen that this PLI schemes has not been able to draw a good amount of investments, barring few sectors. So, what else you think the government should be doing to bring in more competitiveness for the manufacturing sector in India, so that they become more competitive on the global platform?
That's a good question. I remember 15, 30 years back or so, Indian industry, they were given a lot of incentives. Industrial areas were created. President Venkatraman himself did all that, some of that. Now, at that time, the point was that it's like building a tall building and people asking, build the second floor first and then build the ground and first. There was no infrastructure. Power cut was endemic. I remember Tata Steel investing so many crores in putting up power plants so that the continuous process industry can operate. That situation continued till, I would say, even 2010, 2015. Power cuts were still endemic. In some places, it is still so. But I find a transformation in what has happened in the last 10 years. I find when you walk around in Mumbai, you're seeing so many skyscrapers. Everybody who's building a building is not less than 20 floors. And where are they assured of power? That has been taken care of. Highways are coming up, railways are coming up, stations are coming up, and lots of infrastructure. Power problem, I think, has been done away with. It looks like lots of. So now the Indian industrialists who are quite suspicious, and I mean, you can't blame them. They had no infrastructure, and then you tell them you do this, you do that, and so on. But now, situation has changed. There is definitely a certain confidence among the Indian industry. Although PLI was introduced in 2020, as like Mr. Ramesh said, these things take time. There have been, people are suspicious. If I invest 10 crores, 100 crores, 1,000 crores, will I get any return or not? Only now I'm seeing 20,000 crores, 40,000 crores investment coming up. I mean, I found that steel plants are coming up, one of the biggest power guzzlers, and they are coming up. And today, India is producing more than 130 million tons of steel, which is something great. So I think what I would say as a threshold has been reached. But I would say the next 5 years are going to be critical. If the private sector does not invest, and if the current trend in FDI continues, then we are going to face very tough situation. But if these are overcome, maybe the government will have to give more support for some more time, at least another 4 or 5 years more. Only then can Indian industry come forward. That is my view.
Absolutely, Mr. Jayaraman, and thanks for those inputs. Dr. Jayaraman, while we know on the one side we are trying to look at how can we have a seat in the global environment today, but we all also know that on the other side, a lot of countries are looking at more inclusively. They are looking at more locally, and we are also propagating as in India that we should have a more as a local as a vocal and vocal as a local. Uh, and there's a more of local consumption, local manufacturing, etc. That's a mindset globally people are having. In this scenario, how do you think that India will be able to increase its market share globally? Because most of the countries are looking at how can they have more of the internal setup, how can they increase more of the internal consumption, whereas India is trying to increase its global share of from a manufacturing sector.
So this is at multiple levels of discussion. It is not just purely economic or purely strategic. There is a lot of geopolitical layers to this that have an influence. So if you look at protectionism, as a whole is increasing. It's a very strong political platform. In a lot of developed countries, the right wing is getting stronger and stronger, and they want to protect their country from, the economic. They don't want to get left behind economically. So that's something that's very clear. That is at a broad geopolitical level. But it's also happening that countries are getting into bilateral treaties, right? They are increasingly beginning to ignore multilateral treaties and they're looking at bilateral treaties. And with India becoming a very strong brand and a very strong voice in a lot of international forums, I believe that India will negotiate good treaties. So I'm not too worried about that, right? So I'm not too worried about protectionism preventing Indian companies or India from getting a fair share of the global opportunity. But I think the failure or the potential for failure lies with us. The tendency so far has been to sell to the bottom of the pyramid, really make products for the low end of the market, sell our products cheap. Now, if you look at most markets in the world for almost all products, 80% of the opportunity lies for high performance, high value. It's value-based buying rather than price-based buying. Yeah. So if we as a company, we as a country and companies in our country play continuously on the price-based buying segment, then we're going to lose out. Forget about treaties. That market is very small. And that means that we will have to keep Indians cheap, right? In order to sustain presence in the price-based segment. Now, that's not in our interest. That's not in our interest as Indians. That's not in our interest as a country. So in order to really take advantage of the opportunities globally, we need to go into the value segment of every market opportunity. And that means investing in technology, investing in quality, investing in systems and processes that are far, far higher than what we are currently having, right? Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. But it's not a short-term game. It has to be a long game. And I think if we take a long game view of it, we can build it out. But it's not instant nirvana. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And if we take a long view, I think there are huge opportunities there.
Yeah, Manish, can I just come in and add something to what Dr. Jairam said? I entirely agree with him. I would like to look at one point where Indian industrialists over the last many years, many of them have gone abroad and set up facilities. That's primarily what Dr. Jairam says. In India, the value proposition is different. Abroad, it is different. So the Indian companies couldn't do much in India, but they have invested abroad where they found the conditions for working are very good and they could learn something about how to create higher value. And that is what they have been doing. Companies like Mahindra, Tata, and so many other groups have gone and they have been learning and they have done a significant amount of investment abroad. That's the point I just wanted to add to what Dr. Jairam said.
No, absolutely. And I think Mr. Jairam and Dr. Jairam, I think, Dr. Jairam and Mr. Jairam, I think you touched upon a very important thing is the premiumization. How can we bring that premium layer to our products, which will give us more value and target those customers who are meant for premium products, similar to some global companies which are doing. While I think which we are on that particular journey, but with you also touched upon a good point where technology will also play a very important role in this. And that with that point, Mr. Kuller, while we see that the technology again is an area which is always changing, and as you look at, we were in the era where we started with machines. Today we are talking about technologies, AI, Gen AI, adoption of those within every aspects of our lives, including manufacturing. What you think this role of modern technologies will be there in manufacturing and how it will help India to become a global powerhouse?
Sure. So, I 100% agree. The product design and manufacturing processes have seen significant improvement over last few years. Okay. The customers are now looking at more robust design with very stringent tolerances produced at the lowest cycle time and at the most competitive global prices. Okay. So it is therefore imperative that we have the latest manufacturing and assembly technologies that produces components with consistent quality level, with part level traceability. It's very important when, and especially when you're exporting your products, the traceability, whatever reason, if there's any issue, you must be able to contain, any challenges that that specific batch or product have. So the expectation is customers are expecting, the traceability can be retrieved within seconds the moment they give you the part number or the batch number. Okay. So, and all these requirements are no more optional. These are must have if you have to compete at the global stage. Okay. So the important point is to have these latest manufacturing technologies available locally, where we don't have to depend on import at a very heavy price. So getting this locally available at the right price point to be successful. So that's very critical in my opinion. Thank you.
And maybe Dr. Jayaraman, a good input from you will help, because while this technology adoption we talk about, but then all this requires, as you were talking also about capital and also skilled workforce. I think what's your take on that? How we will be able to skill our people and get a capital at a cost which is more competitive?
I hope you meant me or Dr. Jairam.
Dr. Jay.
Okay. All right.
Sorry for this.
So I think like I said in response to the earlier question, the game that we are playing as a country and as companies in our country, it's a long game, right? Now, if we take short-term steps for a long-term success, then we will end up remaining short even in the long run, right? So what we need to really look at is invest in skills. We have to build the skills, and either the country doesn't build the skills, then the companies have to build the skills. There's no choice. The question really is, we can't keep blaming the country for our thing and be fatalistic about what the country is doing. Now, if we are a company that has responsibilities to its stakeholders, and if skill is required, then we have to build that skill. So in our company, we have a vocational training school that we run for 3 years. And we train people in the specific competencies and capabilities that are required for our manufacturing, the lines and systems that we have. So I don't think that's a difficult one. Now, if your entire manufacturing philosophy and strategy is based on low cost, keep it low cost, and you're trying to say any skill is good enough for me to just put warm bodies on the line and get the job done somehow or the other, then you don't have the robust platform to build quality and therefore play in the top of the pyramid in the market. And which means you're going to be playing at the bottom of the pyramid, which is again not a big opportunity or a sustainable opportunity. So I think we need to build skills, and while building skills, we have to make Indians expensive and make them and therefore drive value. As far as capital is concerned, I think we look at large companies and say how much capital they have. I think the thing that we need to remind ourselves is large companies were not born that way. They were made that way, right? And they were made that way over a series of short and medium-term plans and built very, very diligently, deliberately, and with a lot of careful mitigation of all the risk. I don't see a problem of availability of capital as a thing. So if you're saying I want to do a 10,000 crore punt when you are a 500 crore company, then yes, you can say I don't have capital, right? But that's a wrong punt, right? But if you're looking for money to build your next and your next and the next, sufficient capital is available and it is quite attractive. And the more you build your global business, the more you're able to access capital anywhere else, anywhere in the world. So why are you worried about only capital availability in India and the cost of capital in India. That's not a problem at all. If you have a natural hedge of your international business, you have the ability to borrow anywhere in the world. So I don't see capital availability and the cost of capital as a challenge if you architect your journey very deliberately and methodically. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Mr. Jayaraman, now over to you. Supply chain has been seen as one of the concern areas with most of the CEOs now, and with more specifically with this entire shifts which is happening within the geopolitical environment. And how do you think the technology can help in making this supply chain more efficient?
Yeah, supply chain has become a talk of the town, especially after COVID. And the word resilient supply chain is something which is now very much in use. Now, in terms of technology, the major advancements have been in terms of IoT and the related ones. Now, I would look at technologies in two ways. One is domain-specific technologies and domain-agnostic technologies. What I mean is domain-specific are those which deal directly with the production of goods and services. Like, for example, the LD technology for steel making, the Haber process for the production of ammonia, and so on. These are domain-specific technologies where engineering knowledge and science knowledge is very much required. These require in-depth knowledge of the respective domains, and specialists are needed to run the facilities. With the advancements in the world, nowadays, such technologies are very much available across the board. In fact, you do hear of, certain instances where somebody made a nuclear bomb from learning things from the Google. So such is the status of affair in the domain technology. If you pay the money and get the right people, you can do it. On the other hand, the agnostic technologies include things like 5G mobility, IoT, machine learning, artificial intelligence, which can all operate in any domain, whether you're running a steel plant, whether you're running a telecom company, whether you're running a foundry, all this, they need all of these. And these are why, that's why I call it an agnostic, domain agnostic. Going forward, both these, which is the domain and the domain agnostic technologies, have to be married very well. In fact, there is a very recent book by Dr. Vijay Govindaraj, which talks about fusion strategies. What he's saying is, all these years, we have had a product-based strategies developed by companies. However, with the advent of IoT and related technologies, you have now a good combination. You have to have a combination of domain-specific and domain-agnostic technologies. And this fusion is what is going to make companies far more B2C than B2B. In fact, I have seen this in many companies, even in steel companies, they are going directly to B2C, which is something unheard of in the 1990s or 2000s. Now, steel companies are having steel shops selling vessels and so on. So that is the kind of change that has come about. I think this is going to be the biggest change in terms of supply chains. You need to marry both these technologies, and only then will you be able to bring about resilient supply chain. There are many issues in this, but I don't think I want to go into all that in this particular discussion. But unless you marry these two, the chances of having a resilient supply chain is very, very low.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jain. Mr. Ramesh, the other area which we have always seen, which is research and development, and India has always been seen as been lagging in research and development compared to the other countries, more specifically towards the West. How do you think with this entire initiative of Make in India, will it have any impact in boosting up the R&D initiatives?
Well, as a short answer, again, I think a lot of what I would like to say about this particular question is already said by Mr. Jayaraman. R&D in product, R&D in process, we definitely need to get deeper and far more. See, making in India for India and making in India for the world. While some things remain the same, a lot of things are very, very different, So most important, if it is for the world, the earlier days, it used to be benchmarking and trying to get to what the product or the processes were from a world perspective. Now it's about anticipating needs and maybe getting one step ahead. And so this R&D is both about basic R&D, product R&D, process R&D, and very, very important, like what Mr. Jayaraman said, is these agnostic technologies to see what are those. See, all markets are diverse. And at the end of the day, R&D is to make better products and to make better processes. But ultimately, if you don't find the right segment to serve it to, and that's where these agnostic technologies really come into the picture. He spoke of B2B businesses becoming B2C. While, traditionally cars were bought and sold through dealers. Now you have manufacturers interacting with the end users to sell cars or motorcycles or whatever it is by having the ability to customize it, which is where again the supply chain comes into the picture and all those issues come into the picture. So coming back to your question, will it impact R&D? It has to impact R&D. See, again, it's not about a business. One is, of course, is about the scale of the business being big, small, catering across the globe, catering to all the markets or catering to certain markets. All that comes down to a matter of strategy of the company. So whether it is to the bottom of the pyramid, whether it is to the mid of the pyramid, whether it is to the top of the pyramid, the right awareness about what value are you creating and you're serving to. See, all businesses need to have material, need to process material, and need to come out with a product and a bundle of services around the product to ultimately satisfy the customer. Now, at the bottom of the pyramid, you have people who have certain needs. At the top of the pyramid, you have certain people who have certain needs. Now, if you really look at it like that, a Maruti 800 and a Mercedes-Benz ultimately is a car, and now why does somebody give you thousands of dollars and why does somebody give you hundreds of thousands of dollars between the two is about that R&D, that technology, and how do you package it and give it to that particular segment of the country. So make in India for the world. Once you've got that strategy in place and once you know what is it that value that you're providing, R&D into enhancing that value, R&D in removing waste and cost from that value has to be done. Otherwise, you're going to be out of business. And that's exactly where, in addition to all of this, you need to look at competencies, which in a very, very small way is skills. And on skills, you build these competencies so that the service to the segments of market needs to be important. So traditional R&D, situational R&D, segmental R&D on all of these three, I think, is going to become critical.
Absolutely. And maybe Mr. Kular, I would also like to have your views while the R&D, as Mr. Ramesh said, is an important, and you'll have to focus and you'll have to look at from different lenses. While again, what we are looking at from a new product development perspective, while we do R&Ds, at times we may not be able to reach market with the pace that we want to. What's your view? How the technologies can be leveraged, and will they have any impact in terms of taking the products faster to the market?
Sure. I think it's very important, to have, because the lead time to reach a customer is very critical. So unless and until, giving some examples, the rapid prototyping or making these master samples, how we can make those products faster so that we can do a lot of these, especially on the automotive side of the business or OEM side of the business. There's a lot of testing and validation is required before the products is rolled out to end customers. So if we can find ways, and a lot of tool manufacturing and component manufacturing needs a minimum lead time. It could be anywhere between a month to a year. So if we can come up with which can technologies which can replicate tooled up samples, and that can be used for testing and validation, that could substantially reduce the time to market, and that's important in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Dr. Jairam, we have seen that obviously for any country to make a mark on a global map, and more specifically for India, how important is for individual companies, while the government does their part of bringing in the reforms policies, but how important it is for individual companies to have a global outlook, because traditionally most of the companies, as everyone mentioned, has been always been looking at the bottom of the pyramid, which is more for the local domestic consumption.
So the government doesn't make the economy. I think the individual players, that is the citizens and the companies that are organized by citizens, are the ones that are the economic agents of the country. And obviously, each of them has to aspire to be global in order for a company or in order for a country to be a global country. I mean, a globally competitive country. Now, having said that, it's not just, there has to be a compelling reason why a country wants to be global or a company wants to be global, right? I think the compelling reason comes from the size of the opportunity, right? You take any product that most companies in India make, the global opportunity is anywhere between 20 to 100x of what's the opportunity in India, right? Now, when you have that kind of an opportunity and you're serious about making a business out of what you are in presently, rather than going horizontally across 20 other businesses, you want to be vertically focused on one business, then the most logical thing is to build your business globally, because the opportunity is exponentially higher than what you have in India. Now, to realize that opportunity, what works in India is not going to get you there, right? You need to transform the organization, not at an incremental level of a product alone, but transform it at every level, at a person level, at a process level, product level. Everything has to be global. You can't have local ingredients of any kind, whether it's a hard ingredient or a soft ingredient, and then try to make a global product or a global business. So when you're wanting to transform, you need to transform every facet of your organization. And that's a long process. But in most businesses, it's a worthwhile opportunity because it's exponentially higher. And that's what we need to do. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think very, very good and very detailed insights around how do we look at holistically, if we need to make a mark on the global map, and more importantly is, as you rightly mentioned, local ingredients might be used, but you need to look at you need to have an outlook of a global requirement, so that you can reach to the top of the ladder, which is the value based products more specifically. Now, Mr. Cooler, while we have seen that the governments over the last 10 years have put some efforts in making manufacturing as an important aspect of our GDP, but despite most of these efforts, we have seen that the GDP has remained stagnant. Largely, the manufacturing share of the GDP has remained stagnant to around 17%. What would be your advice to government, while since we are very close to now the budget session, what the government should look at from a budget perspective?
Sure. So, I'll share a couple of points that are relevant, for our industry. So if you look at, things that are very critical for success of manufacturing sector's growth. So one is, if you see, let's say, we are present in, and government focuses on electric vehicle, okay? So if you look at electric vehicle, whether it is electric cars, buses, two-wheelers, there is an inverted duty structure, okay? So which means the duty on the finished product is lower than the duty on the component side, okay? So that creates a mismatch. And so these kind of inverted duty structure government needs to fix. Secondly, there's still, ambiguity on many points. There are a lot of things that where, the classification of components, especially components that are used across various segments, there is an ambiguity on the structure or the classification of those products. I think that needs to be fixed. And last but not the least, government in 2019 started, this 15% corporate tax, for the entity starting manufacturing after 2019 October, I believe. So that, duty period is ending in 2024. If we have to promote, more and more manufacturing, and that, in my opinion, that helped, bring investment and technologies to India. So if we have to continue to, focus on this, the government needs to extend this concessional duty structure on manufacturing beyond 2024. So I think these are the key points that are relevant to our industry. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Kular. Sir Ramesh, you would like to add anything more on what Mr. Kular mentioned and the ask from the government?
The ask from the government can be an endless list, and they'll give you some things, they'll not give you some things. See, two things. If we are focusing on increasing manufacturing into GDP, and like most of the panelists have been saying, the market outside of India for any manufactured product is 10, 15, 20, whatever X of what is consumed in India. That's a well-known given fact. Now, if that is the case, then access to markets is something that needs to be given. See, from exports, again, I'm speaking on behalf of the capital industry. If we need to integrate and if people need to manufacture in India and manufacture in India for the world, they must have better leverage of showcasing their products to world markets. And they must be, while the money is ours, see, we still have a lot of age-old practices of, because of course, the non-convertibility on the capital account. See, for capital equipment, the global standards are people buy machines off stock. People use machines. People use machines on pay by use. Now, if those kind of structural, infrastructural and governance issues need to be tackled by the government of India. For example, I believe the government of India should really very seriously in the export policy really look at saying that Indians and Indian companies should be able to keep their machines as stock as it is in India, anywhere in the world, which are those, I mean, of course, with the due diligence and research in the big markets. It could be some kind of a bonded place where, yes, there are checks and there are balances and there are accountabilities to be done. Because if you don't have products and if you don't showcase your products and if you don't allow customers to touch, feel and play with your products, then you are depriving an opportunity of Indian companies to showcase and thereby build companies. Like what Dr. Jayaraman said, companies become big by interacting with customers, working with customers. So this attempt must be made. So export policy, to look specifically, again, I'm talking from a capital equipment perspective to see what needs to be done. Third, I would strongly recommend that expenses on research and development, on technology and on process should definitely be given incentives. Of course, let the companies spend on their own. We are not asking for write-offs, but availability of funds, strengthening the financial, working with Exim Bank that has been set up, while a lot of that is available for hard-backed assets, soft-backed assets, soft technologies. Those are some areas I believe if the government could bring about some change in the structure of how those are financed and the structure of how those accountings are treated, specifically with regard to foreign exchange. I think this is an important ask that the industry will have, because we're looking at growing exports multifoldly.
Correct. Dr. Jairam, your views on this?
Thank you. You know, I've been in business for the last 37 years, and I still find it very fascinating and amusing that every year we are the only country and the citizens of only country that sit with bated breath and wringing hands when the finance minister reads out the budget, right? This doesn't happen in any country, right? And why is it? I think it's a matter for us to reflect, and there are something that we can recommend to the government. The reason why we sit there with bated breath and wringing hands is because we are wondering which policy is going to change, right? And therefore, what is the impact for us, right? What we need to build a competitive country and competitive set of companies is policy stability, right? Now, the policy may be favorable or unfavorable. I mean, you present an unfavorable policy, industry finds a way to work with it, right? But if there is a flip-flop in policy, then it's very difficult to respond to it constantly, right? So if there is one request, I would say, let policies be stable, right? The second thing that I would say is, don't give subsidies, because subsidies make us weak, right? We should not ask for subsidies. There are subsidies that are required for people at the bottom of the pyramid in this country, and the government should rightfully use that money to find a way to build them. So I don't think we need it. We need to find a way to build our companies on the strength of our own competencies rather than subsidies. And the third thing that we need to do is, rather than subsidies and all these stuff, ease the business processes, whether it is the port processes, whether it's the transport processes, or compliance processes, governance processes. Make it easy. I'm not saying get rid of them, make them easy, right? And in this age of technology, we should be able to co-create these solutions that are based on mutual trust. So I think these are the three things that I would have.
Very apt, very apt. So, Mr. Jairaman, your inputs and asks from the government to increase the manufacturing GDP share?
Yeah, everybody seems to be favoring the Trishul approach, all three suggestions. So I'm just looking at this as what is the scenario? Scenario is that the GDP is targeted to increase at the rate of about 8% for the next few years at least. It is also a fact that the government is currently the exports about 450 goods and services, and the imports are about 700, so $1 trillion plus. It is the government's objective to take the exports to 1 trillion in the next whatever time period. Now, in order to, this is the background in which we have to make things happen. There are many things that can be done, but I would like to concentrate on only a very few. One is to hold more conclaves with industry to deploy capital. I'm in fact, day before yesterday, the finance minister was planning to have a conclave. I don't know if it has happened, but I believe that this is one of the key issues which needs a lot of attention. The second is that many Indian companies are not only investing in India, but they're also investing abroad. So slowly over a period of time in the last 15, 20, even more than that, 30 years plus, Indian industrialists have invested everywhere. And now in the G20, it was said that India will become a representative of the global south. So that again is going to call for a lot of investments. So I think over a period of time, we should start looking at not only make in India for the world, but make by Indians for the world. So you're going to see a lot of Indian industries in many parts of the world, and that should be promoted actively. And finally, a third one, I have studied the US industry and the interaction between the US industry and the academicians, the laboratories, the universities. And that collaboration has been, in my view, that has been at the root of the way the American economy is now at 28 trillion. Incredible. Same, Chinese have also adopted that kind of a methodology, and they have reached about 16 or 17 trillion. Now, India, I am not saying anywhere near that. I would strongly recommend that the government should increase and improve the, I don't know, mandating is required, but there has to be some sort of a greater collaboration between industry and academics so that Indian professors and Indian consultants, especially, for example, the amount of consultants that have done a lot of good to America is not a joke. We have had some of the world's best consultants working in America, and that is why they have the world's top economy. And that needs to be brought into India as well. I am seeing a lot of consultants. In fact, anytime I look at a B school recruitment nowadays, I find 30 to 40% students getting into consulting. I think that's a very good sign in my view. It's a good sign. I think that you need a lot more knowledge, a lot more scientific approach to management. I hope that if this is supported, then we can leapfrog. We can go from 8% increase to something like 10 to 12% if scientific management is practiced all across the board, at least in large organizations, more than what they are doing today. So these are my 3 points.
No, thank you, Mr. Jariman. And I think in the interest of time, probably we'll switch to Q&A session. But before that, I would like to extend my thanks to all esteemed panelists for sharing your invaluable insights and expertise on this subject. Thank you once again to all. And Mr. Rao, we can open for a Q&A session now.
Yeah. So now the floor is open for Q&A. Anybody can, ask the question. Unmute yourself and ask. Anybody wants to ask question? Okay, I think in the meantime, I will take the privilege to ask a couple of questions. Okay, one question is, we have touched upon various aspects. I think one question which probably we have missed upon is the sustainability and a green angle to the whole concept of Make in India. So I would like to hear from, all the panelists, how important is to in the sustainability green concept to be applied or implemented while you are trying to make India a globally competent manufacturing hub. Maybe Dr. Jairam can start with.
I think it's not a question of how important it is. I think it is clear that it is important. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is the compulsion? What are the compulsions? There are regulatory compulsions that we have to fulfill as part of doing business. There are customer compulsions that we need to fulfill in order for us to do business. And then the third and most important is our own conscience compulsions, right? We have a responsibility more than the regulator and the customer to leave behind a very clean world for the future generation. Then I think we need to take that ownership. So across all these 3 compulsions, it's something that it's not just important, it's a must do.
Mr. Ramesh, would you like to add?
Yeah, Dr. Jayaraman put it that way. The only thing that I'd really like to add to that is, of course, leave the world a better place. True cost, I don't know. There's a lot of writing that's happening about, how we do business. So what is the true cost of manufacturing and how does sustainability fit into that? So while all of us keep talking of, increase in business, increase in market share and increase in GDP, we should also, along with that, from a true cost perspective, see, because if that's not there, then we're only racing ourselves on a one-way street before things are really going to collapse. So from a true cost perspective, sustainability, I think, is extremely important. And that's where sensible consumption, which again is a very, very important aspect that's coming in. So it also begins our input from the market to even look at, what is sensible consumption, no matter what the product is. So while we are starting on this from regulatory conscience and all those aspects, a lot of work is being done. I still believe that globally, see, COVID was a wake-up call. So globally, we really need to look at it, and then comprehensively, is there world leadership on this? There is a lot of thinking, and there's a lot that needs to be done.
Mr. Khullar, would you like to add? I would like to know from you how is you are being a global company. You have your own global standards as far as sustainability is concerned. How do you ensure that your even suppliers are in align with your green standards and sustainability?
Sure. So what we are doing, I mean, I'll give you a couple of things which are important. What already panelists said, it's important, to make sure, we are green, we are using green energy, we are compliant. But not only that, starting 2026, European Union is going to implement CBAM. Okay. So CBAM is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. Okay. So European Union, for any products, just to make sure that everybody is compliant to the green regulations, they are going to apply this tax for any material coming into European Union. So any steel produced across the globe, any components imported, this tax will be implemented. And I know there are a lot of challenges. Indian government is also pushing back on implementation of this right now to have a fair say. But that would mean that our products, if we are not adhering to the same manufacturing processes or same gas emissions as in European Union standard, there would be a tax implemented on countries who will export to Europe. So it's very important to be compliant to that. And to answer your question about our suppliers, what we are doing is, as part of our supplier assessment audit, whenever we get any new supplier on board, this is becoming one of the most important criteria for any supplier to be on board for Dana. So that helps us, and for the existing suppliers, we have to put in a lot of effort, whether it is returnable packaging, whether the energy source that they use, how they become, or the water and recycling that they do. So all these are the measures that we are implementing to make sure we leave better planet for the next generation to come in. Yeah.
There is one question from Mr. John. He wants to know, with regards to manufacturers connecting to international OEMs, are the available channels adequate, or would we need a new e-marketplace that promote global trade to be required to set up? So basically, maybe he wants to know, is the present channels adequate enough to reach out to a global OEM by a manufacturer? I think Mr. Khullar, would you like to answer this?
Sure. So for a company like tier one automotive component supplier like Dana, I think we are fairly satisfied with the trade mechanism we have, because it's more B2B, not B2C. So on a B2B basis, there are limited customers. Let's say we have maybe 80 to 100 customers, both domestic and globally. So we have a fairly good channel of marketing our products, as well as there are international fairs that we participate in, or exhibitions that help us get news. So in my opinion, we are fairly, but companies type of business, I think there would be opportunities, and I would like other panelists to come in here.
Dr. Jairam, would you like to say something?
I really don't have any insight on we don't sell to OEMs, we sell to our own, sell to the end customer. So as an OEM, if I have to look at it, there are two types of procurement that we do, standardized commodity type of procurement, which we will probably use e-marketplaces. Then there are design specific parts that we buy, which we will not put in any electronic marketplace. It will be direct interaction with our suppliers. So as far as our experience concerned, whatever is available is adequate.
I think there are a few startups in this group. I would like to hear from Mr. Ramesh and Dr. Jairam and even Mr. Professor Jairaman. What advice would you like to give, say, a small-time entrepreneur and a startup if they want to scale up to a global standards or a global marketplace? Starting with Professor Jairam. Professor Jairaman. Yeah.
Yeah, I can come up with only theoretical inputs on that. I have not an entrepreneur, nor have I started a startup, but I have met people who have started up, and starting up is a very difficult job. And you need to be a jack of all trades for at least 2 to 3 years. You need to have a good funding for it, which is you need to know some of the venture capitalists. They need to be aware. Nowadays, there are lots of, including Industrial Products Finder, or now it is called Smart Enterprises. So they also have lots of websites where information is available on each area of startups. So I would suggest that the person who wants to start up should look at these websites, at least get in touch with one or two of these and closely follow the opportunities that are often updated on these websites. That will give a good information on how to build a roadmap. If the startup person has got funding for at least 3 years, then he should think of starting up. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
Mr. Ramesh, what would be your advice to a startup company?
Yeah, in addition to what Mr. Jairaman said, of course, it's very, very important. Startup, you are trying to serve a segment. You are trying to serve certain customers. Now, if it's product and if it's manufacturing, that's what you're really trying to do. Then what I would very, very strongly suggest is look at very strong see, as a startup, you need to establish yourself in some segment somewhere. So I believe being close to the customer and modifying or updating or suiting, adapting what you have conceived to what the market wants is an extremely, extremely important aspect for startups. So please do that before you scale. Most of the startups that I've seen, the successful ones are the ones who have an understanding of the segment and the service or the product that they are doing from a manufacturing perspective. First, it's important that you are clear about what you're doing and then you scale. Many startups start and then there's a lot of pressure on scaling. So this is something that I would very, very strongly advise and recommend to startups, in addition to, of course, whatever Mr. Jairaman said, to be looked into very, very carefully.
Dr. Jairam, in addition to what has been said, how important is for the companies to understand their core competency when they are aiming for a global market and be successful?
Well, that's so foundational. If you don't understand what your competence is, then it doesn't matter whether it's a global market. Even in the Indian market, you will be an also-ran. I don't think you will convert your competence into a set of unique value proposition for your customer. I think that's so foundational, in my opinion.
Okay, I think we are done with the panel discussion and also the Q&A. I think it was an excellent discussion we had. And I would like to thank all our panelists, Dr. Jairam, Mr. Ramesh, Professor Jairaman, Mr. Kullar, and Mr. Junjunwala for sharing your valuable insights on such an important topic. It was a pleasure having you all on this panel discussion. We would also like to thank all the participants for joining us for today's event. We look forward to your participation in the next virtual event of Smart Manufacturing and Enterprises. Till then, goodbye and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you
very
all.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.